Welcome to the April 14th JL and Zones production user call. We have Michael J, Jan, and myself, Michael, so far. I've invited the Cells author to join us, and I'll add that back when they return. And I've got a few links on the doc, but uh, Michael J, the author of Daemonless, has an RFC up his sleeve he's thinking about for the broad notion of an app store, perhaps inspired by systems like TrueNAS, which delivered apps in various ways. So how about, Michael, you kick that off and we'll see where this takes us.
So I've briefly talked to Hazem about this on Discord, and kind of the idea would be to have a community standard for OCI containers, and basically in the compose file it would be like an FBSD block that describes things like that various UI tools or CLI tools could utilize for hints to one-click install apps. So some examples of that might be it passes ZFS or VNet or DevFS hints, along with the standard compose stuff you would see in an OCI container. So these would be very FreeBSD specific. And this is if you're not familiar, this is quite common throughout the Docker community. This is what other places do. I don't know what exactly TrueNAS does, but I do know like their one-click install is kind of what I would like to see. And the kind of the idea would be is if you have this X FBSD tag or block in the compose, any UI like Silt could potentially support it. I've started a doc. It's a little early. I'll share it, but I ask you to do note that once my arm is better, I
Right.
plan to update it a little
Super
more.
quick question for the context. Can you
Yep.
give a rundown of what those hooks look like? Like, is it a GUI pop-up window? Is it like enter password here? Is it hit a web browser for our clone certificates or whatever? Or what
Yeah,
what,
yeah. Good
what do some of
question.
those look like?
So, um, so I'm trying to think of a specific app that I could maybe give you an example. So, um, like for example, like Radar, it needs mlock, right? So we might pass mlock, uh, an annotation type of thing to the UI. Some things might be like you I don't know, maybe you want 16K. I can't think
Record
of a
size?
yeah, or not packet size, but like ZFS record, yeah, record size on ZFS.
Okay.
So
That
maybe we could pass those annotations, and a lot of them will be hints or suggestions for the UI of what to do. It's things that aren't defined, that would not be defined in OCI 1.3, that are FreeBSD specific, that we would want to be able to control.
Okay, quick question. Have you used rclone and have you noticed that it wants you to hit a web URL to kind of kick it into life with, say, Google Drive?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
been a
something
while, but I've used Arclone before.
this would cover?
What do you mean
Like it's
cover?
an integration hint such that it's depending on more than the raw package system. I,
so
Mm,
if I remember correctly, rclone needs that for OAuth. So it's
yes.
the authentication challenge, and your browser does the login, and for that you have to expose that local host interface somehow, the SSH redirection if it, or something, or give it the address to bind the web server to, so that your browser can do a CORS request or something.
Things like that, because with some of these apps, they do things that are not very Unixy, like kick off a browser for integration, etc. So
so all that would be out of scope. I'm
That's
like,
out of scope. Okay. Got it.
that's definitely not something I was considering.
Okay.
I'm going to ping you the doc if you want to pull it up. I think
Yeah,
if you
let's
look at
do that. And Anthony rolled in. We are
Okay.
discussing Michael J's idea for a TrueNAS inspired App Store one-click system. So I can show this publicly, no
Yeah,
problem.
it's early.
I understand.
And
No worries.
definitely going to change,
Yeah, no
especially
worries.
as we get comments and stuff. But yeah,
Well, that's why we have such discussions.
um,
And
if
let's
you
see if
scroll
it's
to
shared. It
section
is shared. Huh?
2.2.1, I think it will be.
Oh, hold on. No, let's just briefly take a
Sure,
peek
go right
here.
ahead.
You got our attention. You use it. Vendor neutral standard for packaging, distributing, and installing OCI container applications in FreeBSD. One-click App Store experience. Explain for everyone FJORD, FFjord, just so that
Fjord.
fjord, as in inspired by large ice streams in the north, or something else.
Nah, FreeBSD jail orchestration runtime
Thank you.
descriptor.
Got it. Thank you. Just so that we don't get hung up.
So
How do we pronounce SIL?
it's kind of a nautical theme because Docker's always been kind
Oh
of nautical.
goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Vertical silos, horizontal standard. Okay. Goals. Yes. Thank you. So, oh, and I'll put this in the doc too. Okay. So that's documented. Letter rip. I believe you said 1.2.
So yeah, talk quickly about the goals. The vendor neutral. So even though I've built daemonless, I don't want it to be only with daemonless. Like my hope is we could build this. Like if somebody wanted to turn up their own little app store, and use it in Sylve or use it in some other UI or some other CLI app, it would be possible. To kind of mimic the behavior of Casa OS. If you've, I've never used Casa OS, but I did play with the demo online, and they're the ones who produce those little, I don't know, the Intel boards. I can't remember what they're called, but the Casa OS is the one click install is quite nice. And if you've ever used TrueNAS Scale or even the FreeBSD version, the one click install is quite nice.
I can safely say I've never heard of it, and just for everyone listening, I'll drop this in here. I have a quick poll. Has anyone heard of that?
It's a Linux OS.
Okay, interesting.
So if you've heard of the Zima board, that's the
Zima
little
board. Got it.
Intel.
Yes. Okay.
They made this OS.
Okay. Cool.
I've never used it. There's a demo you can use, and that's the only thing I've ever discovered on it.
Focus on. Okay, so moving on. Got it. Thank you. So there's one point. Continue.
Some of the non-goals. So creating container runtime. That's totally out of scope here. That will be up to whatever like daemonless or some other community driven thing. So cross platform portability. So because this is a FreeBSD block, it'll be kind of limited to FreeBSD essentially.
Could that be if-deft in some way with their syntax, such that setting a simultaneous on two OSs would be lovely?
It'd be up to the runtime. It'd be up to the runtime to look for the FreeBSD block, right? So if a Linux device tried to use it, it would just ignore the. If it didn't have support for FBSD block, it just wouldn't.
Okay, fair enough.
And if you want to scroll down to the app manifest, I think this it'll start making, or I hope what I'm saying will start making a little more sense. Section 2.2, unless there's any questions here. And then assumptions is just FreeBSD 15. PKG, etc. And then here's an example of the manifest. So here we have maybe Plex, and then
A good
if you scroll
example.
down, you can kind of see the FBSD block, where we have like a category, a class, and an icon. And this would be important for the UI or CLI tool that would be displaying this in an app store.
Yeah, this looks like very much like a Docker Compose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like the one thing that really bugged me with a lot of Docker images, at least using them and deploying them, like I agree. Like there needs to be more, at least very least, metadata, and that needs to be extractable. And the most annoying thing is when it comes down to mount points, like for persisting data. So that is like, it would be nice without having to hunt down or any special documentation that these mount points or preferred mount points within a container be properly described in metadata, and anything else that may be required, that so I don't have to play a guessing game or hunt down things or get special instructions. I can get an image, have all the metadata, and have all the information contained within it to get it launched and going, as opposed to getting into sleuth mode.
That's such great feedback, and I totally agree, especially on the mount point, like metadata documentation.
What should I mount? Where should I mount it? Like,
right.
and with the FreeBSD, it'd be like, or say like your media center. So like that low hanging fruit here. It'd be nice to have a data store, and I can put my my media into that, or multi-part media, or like say like I have my movies in one folder, TV in another, yada yada yada, and be able to make that either be one mount point or multiple mount points,
right,
and be able to properly describe that. But at the same time, I also think like even describing even parameters, like what type should it be, is it going to be an IP address, is it going to be a path, is it going to be a username or password, and this, that, and the other thing, as well as secrets management going into that as well, username and password reference. So it's like not only list what is needed, but how it's going to be consumed, what type of data it is. So yeah, that's just pouring out of my head right now.
And
Could not agree more.
Go ahead. I'll add to that just the notion of an import of your decade-old Plex configuration on other OS, and it's like, well, if you're migrating from, we mentioned TrueNAS, don't make a new container. Absolutely force a location that is not on your system and does not contain your data.
Yeah,
right.
and we haven't even gotten into versions, a version of FreeBSD, that is. So like right now we got 14 point something containerizable, but we got 15 and 16 going on, and so like I'm not sure if Daemonless has like is multi-release yet, but that also has to be concerned. In consideration. Now I've also thought of like, maybe you can take the base, whatever release it is, and then throw on whatever compiled version of, say, like Plex or whatever. But at the same time, does the compilation of a particular application inherit or change depending on the release version? Like so the kernel ABI or whatever. So that also has to be considered, because in some ways we can save space and reduce time if, say, it doesn't matter what it's compiled, like as long architecture, adding another layer, multi-architecture, so ARM in this case, because that's the only other viable architecture at this point in time. But yeah, I was kind of, where was I going? So Yeah, like maybe we could save time and resources if the application won't be different, but if it does is different based upon release, then some compilation changes, improvements, optimizations, then that needs to be reflected.
So to answer something you mentioned on the Daemonless and versions, so Daemonless will support 15 plus. We opted out of 14 because libsys was introduced in 15, and that just caused so many problems to for running 14 and 15 jails, or 15 and running a 15 jail on a 14 system.
What is
So
libsys? So sorry to jump in.
I
Is it
to be honest,
underscore?
I don't know
Jan,
what
maybe
what,
you have an answer?
what
I
what's
can
in it.
give
It,
some
it was
insight
split out
into
of
that.
libc, I think. But go ahead, John. You might know better than me.
So one of the problems with any kind of Unix system is to define where you implement compatibility layers.
Mhm.
So the Linux approach has been to slavishly maintain system call compatibility. The traditional BSD's approach and Solaris and so on say, no, our compatibility is libc. So the kernel is allowed to change within reason. If you want to perform a system call, you call its wrapper function in libc. That's fine for everything which uses C libraries, but if you have libraries with runtimes in languages like Go and Rust, which don't want to call into libc because it's expensive, because of the garbage collector, because then you have to kind of switch stacks and so on. So they don't want to go through a C wrapper to a system call. And to help these kind of applications, FreeBSD split the system call wrappers into a minimal library which only performs the bare minimum required to perform the system calls and a little bit of threading stubs, which then the runtimes can implement. So your language runtime, for example, Go, can then just build against libsys without building against the whole of libc. That's a really good section. And regarding your point about it being a pain to attempt to run a 15 userland on a 14 kernel, yes, that's to be expected because it's a totally unsupported use case. You cannot have a jail running in your userland than the kernel. That's not supposed to work.
Yeah.
But this
Never
handles
has
some
been.
of those that subset, perhaps?
No,
So
because
how does it assist in that, or does it assist in any way with that backwards compatibility by only focusing on some
it
calls?
would be forward compatibility.
Okay.
Trying to run a 15 userland on a 14 kernel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's always hit or miss. It may accidentally work because
Mhm.
there's no one putting in the effort to make it not work, but it's expected to explode in your face.
Mhm.
Yeah, because like when I was describing my thing, it'd be like you'd be going to the lowest common denominator if there's no improvements compiling under a higher version, but that would just be to save space and time. Granted, not optimal still, but yeah. Um, but yeah, it's just the
Okay.
user land would still have to be 15 or whatever.
Naturally.
Yeah, but the application, the compilation of what you're using it for, like MD or Plex, that would be the question whether it gets any improvement from the lowest common denominator.
Okay.
And
So that came from 15. Any final comments on versioning? I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that.
Yeah, because it's like just to finish up my thought to
Please.
go full circle, it's just be like how Docker builds everything, or containers build everything in slices, and so you could have the whatever release runtime, and then just, well, here's the Plex files, bolt that on, and away we go.
so I had problems with that early on when I started Daemonless. I tried to do a 14 and 15 runtime, and I found that that package base was different in 14 and 15, and I actually didn't debug it very much, and I probably could have, but I decided that, hey, 14 is going to be end of life in the next year or so. Let me just run with 15 plus.
This has been a year of transition, and it's definitely been a moving target. That's been a bit frustrating.
Yeah. It's
You're not
still,
alone, I guess is my comment
it
there.
still presents a problem though. Even though there may not be any significant changes for a decade, eventually there's going to, and it really comes around to how do we handle it? Like, even though the 14, 15 right now presents an interesting problem and it's too easy to say, let's just drop 14.
Right.
But what if something significant eventually happens in the 16 kernel? And we got to leave some wiggle room in order to handle that particular special case.
Yep. So yeah, okay. Well, then you try. What would have you said? You tried a 14, 15 runtime. That was like a hybrid of different versions, or what? What do you mean by that?
So this was before I published anything. This was me just playing around, and I ultimately went with 15.
Fair enough. Well, that's clear. Okay, so I have no problem with that, and even in practice, I'm finding that 15 stable and 16 have certain like Windows fixes that are greatly appreciated. So yes, one has to look to the future or find a different platform. And that's generally true of most things in life, unless you're on Windows 7 and will not die there. So moving on to your manifest and all, I just have a quick question about what about the malicious manifest with like post install rm-rf / etc. Some of this I assume must be privileged, and I don't know what safeguards can be there or are in Docker container compose files, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is where I'm going to lean on the community for help. I'm not the expert in this.
Signing and vetting.
First was signing, you said?
Yeah, like well, granted, we could say whatever authority approved, and so you have an image signed or have something to validate that, like an MD5 checksum type thing, like
Right. Well, you can MD5 checksum the heck out of the string RF, but anyway, yeah,
But-
that sounds like you've got some ideas on that.
well, it just you can even think of like how Apple, throws a hissy fit if an application isn't digitally signed, right? And we could get some form of authority, or whomever can be authoritative for the store. And then if a store is found to be compromised, then they can be revoked.
Flashbacks to the Microsoft Phone App Store, which was like half junk, but they got their numbers up. So yeah, okay, Jan, what you got? Set us straight.
So there's not a lot you can do when running hooks on the host system directly, because by design, if rail hooks like the prepare phase and so on are allowed to run arbitrary code in a shell as root by default. And that is needed for stuff like managing file systems on the host, maybe creating CFS data sets and so on. That's kind of intentional. But code signing will only tell you which private key signed that bit string. It doesn't tell you what it does when you execute it. It doesn't tell you who controls the key. For that, you need more context than as code signature will give you.
Yeah.
In the end, this is a question of trust, and not just in the everyday use of the term, but the code you run in those hooks is trusted in kind of a military term of the sense, as in it's trusted because it can hurt you. So you rely on it. You then need some kind of social system to back that up. so that you can hold people accountable, make it easy to track changes. Sadly, unless people are forced into this level of compliance, almost nobody will spend their time validating this dependency chain. It's the same problem with things like Linux, Flatpak, and so on, where you find popular applications bundled with totally end-of-life library dependencies with a long list of open CVEs, some of them easily exploitable. So what you can do is you can try to use an additional layer of sandboxing. So if your hook runs inside the jail, it's already at least one layer of sandboxing away from the host. So something like the script actually starting the application in the jail. If it's malicious, yes, it's malicious, but it runs in a jail. You have this security boundary. For other things, it may be interesting to use nested jails. So that you have a privileged jail for administrative stuff like network virtualization and storage. You delegated ZFS dataset to that outer jail. You make it the VNet-enabled jail. You may run a DHCP client in there or some other network-related service. And then you put your actual application into a child jail of that jail. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one mapping. You could just have one per tenant of those outer jails, which handle networking, and then you can run the jails inside of there. If you want to support IPv4 DHCP, then you probably want one-to-one because you need one DHCP client per IP address. But if you do that, then you can run your inner jail with IP4 equals inherit and probably IP6 equals inherit. So that just doesn't do an additional layer of network virtualization.
Yeah, but
it's still locked basically every other namespace. So System 5 IPC, file system, and so on. All of that is one additional level down.
Yeah, but there still is malware and whatnot that is viruses and what have you that are very much aware of nested virtualization. So this is effectively the same model.
How does
what can they do about that?
Well,
being aware that the malware runs
they break out.
Virtualization.
They're aware of it and they break out.
Then you have a bigger problem because your virtualization is insecure.
Michael, you had something you kicked us off.
I was curious, do we know how TrueNAS or other systems that have stacks like this work? I imagine, I don't know this to be true. I imagine some places don't care, but I don't know.
I'll take that opportunity to throw in my little point here, which is like you get reviews through reviewability. You make it clean and simple and logical and not Byzantine. You will get more eyes on it. And yes, there are myths about the infinite number of eyeballs reading the infinite number of code, but if that code is difficult to parse, well then, yeah, you have a problem. So just looking at your examples here, if commands are obscure, well, they're obscured and might not jump out to casual readers. So hey, just keep it clean and simple. And if that's a question of a style guide or otherwise, well, you'll thank yourself.
Agree.
Just thinking out loud, because here we have this trail of tiers of so many platforms trying to do this in different ways. And late in the game, a colleague of mine produced a TrueNAS plugins article for Core back before things were disappearing. But it's like, finally, we canonically described what it took. I think it was for Plex. It was not that difficult, but just somehow we're not using that exact same code for half a decade later. Anthony, you've got a comment. Sort of stuff in OpenBSD. Anthony, do you have indeed experiences with the OpenBSD way of doing this?
I wouldn't call it concrete experience, but I have fooled around with it, and as far as I'm aware, it's the same sort of way that Mac uses containerization on their desktop for all of their apps. In short, I think I always get this backwards, but I think Pledge is something that restricts syscalls, and Unveil is
Right.
the file system.
Yep. So Pledge is something we don't have in FreeBSD. It's a basically they label their system calls into sets, and an application, once it does a pledge, restricts itself to just that subset which it has listed, and it can, during its runtime, further subset its remaining system call interface. So that, let's say, the application starts, it opens its config file, and then it reads the configuration and does some initial setup, and then applies some pledges. And maybe, depending on configuration or complexity of application, this pledge may be applied in stages. Same, for example, if you know that your application will never fork and exec, you immediately give up the right to do that, even before reading the configuration. Then you read your configuration, let's say your little static web server, with no ability to run CGI scripts directly or so on. Then you read the configuration and set up Unveil to allow yourself to read your wrap root and nothing else. And then your sandbox is set up. The important part here is that it's on the application to use. It's not like SE Linux, where you have an external policy being applied to the application. And also, it's still the same API and API. It's just that you intentionally remove parts you don't want to use from your reachable system services you can call. That makes it fairly easy to retrofit to applications compared to what FreeBSD has with Capsicum, where it's basically a new ABI, which is a slightly extended subset of the normal one, where everything has to be done by capability. It's not that it's harder to program within this capability paradigm, but it's a massive change because it infests every library, because now everyone has to use OpenAdd instead of add and so on. So it's hard to retrofit Capsicum to any application which does non-trivial I/O. Any other use of system calls.
Okay, on that point, another recent discussions about Pledge on FreeBSD. I've done a tiny bit of nudging related to that. And geez, speaking of app ecosystems and app stores, Anthony, it sounds like you have a strategy with your kldload.com. Is this modeled off of, be it the Docker model or something new entirely? With a whole lot of data sets.
Well, to be honest, there's nothing like this that exists, as far as I know. So I built it all.
Okay.
But essentially what happens is I have a landing zone that basically runs a seed box. So in order to do everything nice and have it transfer and, not snapshot a bunch of stuff, I separated everything out. So all of the landing zones have their own data sets with their own properties. So for example, like when you're downloading a torrent or something, it's doing random writes. You may not want LZ compression, for example. And it gives you the fine-tuning ability, but I'm not sure if it qualifies in the app delivery method that you're talking about. I just thought I'd post it as a bit of an example of how I was doing it, because if your app delivery is easier to deal with a data set, then this might be the way to do it. So you could I think you can put a data set in a jail on FreeBSD. So that might be a way to further separate it, but I just thought I'd throw it out as an example.
Yes, you can delegate a data set to a jail in FreeBSD, just like you can in Illumos. And then that jail is allowed to basically manage that data set and all sub-data sets of that.
Tiny point of order. I am not sure that Netflix is using ZFS on their appliances. For what it's worth, they had their reasons for having fail-in-place UFS, but anyway.
For the
Yeah,
open
this is
content
old.
appliances, they're using UFS because they don't care about any of the correctness and reliability features. They care about performance because their appliances are cache appliances. If a drive dies, a drive dies. If the system crashes, it crashes. Reboots with one drive less, and then the cache has less hot content. It will eventually rebalance.
Yep, just pulls it from elsewhere, so it fails in place. Anyway.
Yeah, that was
What
only
they
from
care
my
about
own.
is pure performance.
I remember once somebody from the ZFS team was doing a PowerPoint in one of the BSD cans, and they had mentioned it there. So it's fairly old. I think it's like 2018.
Okay.
I'm sure they've improved.
Michael J, does that follow your model in any way, shape, or form?
I think this is a little lower level.
Got it.
But I am very interested to look at this after the call.
Cool.
And if there's anything else you want to share, Anthony, I'm very interested to hear.
Yeah, because we don't want to have 3 people produce 5 solutions, because we again have that trail of tears of, well, here's the new thing that gets one app right that someone is excited about, and then
I guess my only caution is
yes,
my project is like 100% Linux. So it's like Linux that's trying to be a FreeBSD.
I like that. Okay.
So I'm not sure it's going to map directly. But yeah, if it helps, I just figured I would post it.
Well, okay, quick point of order. There are those who would like to pull a full VeriSign where their entire stack is, well, dual stacked with FreeBSD and Linux, such that if one has a catastrophic security vulnerability or otherwise, we don't lose .com, such that going to the home lab, if one can migrate between Plex on FreeBSD, Windows, Linux, you name it, Haiku, effortlessly with some amount of common experience beyond just raw Plex interface, well, great, because Plex
that's exactly why I did this. Because literally, if Plex is on your root, all you need to do is import the pool, your Plex pool, and you're up and running. Or if you want to move it somewhere else, you can export it and then create a new VM that's how I do it with KLD load. Is I would create a new VM that's just the root file system and Plex, and then all my drives are in its own pool. So you just simply import the whole pool, and then your whole layout's there. That's why I use all the ZVols and such.
So rephrasing
totally
that,
portable.
Take a ZFS perspective to all of this, because Docker landed in the world without a ZFS perspective, and here we are. So let's find out what that common notion is beyond raw OpenZFS, but what hooks, be it parameters per jail, be it should, for example, do either of these recipes show all data set parameters? So properties, thank you for this, precisely this. That should be universal to a given app across all OpenZFS platforms. Just thinking out loud here. So how much of that burden would be on some ZFS abstraction syntax? I couldn't tell you, but yes, please, thank you. You're doing it there. Let's see. I'll search for data set here. You've got lots of them. You've got the layout for data sets. Here's compression. Boom. You've got compression specified there. So yes, gentlemen, please be on the same page there. And of course, WireGuard is WireGuard. It really doesn't care what OS it's talking to. So please keep the OpenZFS common properties in mind. Flex don't care. OpenZFS don't care. Just, yeah, don't reinvent that wheel. And heaven forbid we have incompatible, be it Plex installations across OSs simply because, oh, people went down different rat holes. And people see this to some degree with Proxmox, like, oh, they've done their things and their layouts, and that
So
it's hopefully not a tool to glue you in the ecosystem. Go ahead.
so Fjord isn't defining that. I think what I think you're asking is like Daemonless or somebody else like Daemonless would define that.
Is this lower level or higher level?
Like the lower level pieces.
Mhm.
So like Daemonless would define that, and this is more of a, I don't know, a higher level thing.
Okay, cool.
Or maybe I'm wrong, and this is why I want to have this conversation. But
Please.
I mean, when I started this, that was my idea. This would be a high level agreement between a community that's building OCI images and a community that has an app store within some UI or CLI tool. And then the OCI image itself, and back to your original comment of, hey, keep things similar. I agree. But I think, in my opinion, that should happen at the community level, like Daemonless, and not at the not here. But if you disagree, let me know. I'm curious.
Now, one point I did very much harp on being simple and reviewable. Jan, I'm sure you have some opinions on how to not burn users with what, from when you squint, two data sets look the same. When you look closely, they could be dramatically different. And as we get into things like, oh gosh, what is it? Not FastDedupe, the block cloning. It's like suddenly when you replicate those things, they can be very different from the source and destination, but look like they are identical. And then you become a storage engineer when you thought you're just setting up a movie library. Anyway,
The problem with ZFS block cloning is that the deduplication enabled by it is not preserved when doing a ZFS send.
bingo. That's what I meant by that comment. Surprise on the whole surprise of like, oh wait, my backup is far larger than my source, especially when dealing with movies or something air quotes large. So anyway,
The even uglier part is that not just your backup is larger, because the assumption is your backup server has more storage than the source, but that you may not be able to restore the backup on the original system, because restoring would be another send, so you get the already expanded
bingo.
data. And now your system suddenly says, yeah, disks are full if you have a high deduplication factor, thanks to clever use of block cloning.
Yep. So that's where, again, I'm glad you both right off the bat have notions of those settings. Let's identify those potentially finger burning categories of functionality, because whiny blog post derived from that, from the iceberg / landmines / whatevers, are perennially a problem on the internet. Does this leave you, Michael, and even Anthony and Mark, food for thought to continue with? Maybe we reconvene.
Yeah, totally. I'd like to discuss it more in the future. I'd like to digest everything we've kind of discussed.
Absolutely. Great. Well, let's perhaps call it good there. I've got links on recent things across my desk on, say, just a BlackListD guide. It's like, oh, failed to ban is built in FreeBSD. Use it. These are all publicly in the docs. Jails with CDist, JExec CDist. To that point about the Brooks's tool on system call libc separation. Well, here's a list of 16 system calls that showed up this week. Feld had a nice thing on setting up S3. That's one thing where, gee, with Minio going a bit sideways, we want little plugins in these ecosystems that just spin those up and are hopefully portable between, be it OSs, be it existing data. So I don't know who's got the most S3 experience here, but do keep track of all this. And I'm glad Feld made a very digestible summary there from like what yesterday. There was a kind word for DCH who often frequents these and is very involved in all things container. And this, I think, was last week briefly. I just kind of kept it coming forward because it didn't get any attention. It's like, remember Webmin? Well, something for Bastille. That said, any other topics, ideas, questions, concerns, funny jokes, you name it? Three UTC. Let's see. Mark, do you want to have the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.